Thank you for staying with us. He's the man who steered India through sweeping reforms. He paved the way for India's emergence as a global economic powerhouse, a soft-spoken technocrat who laid the foundation of a new India. Dr. Manmohan Singh passed away last night at the age of 92 here in the national capital. He was the first Prime Minister since Jawaharlal Nehru to ever return to power, for the Congress at least. Manmohan Singh was often tagged the accidental Prime Minister. Many would say he was a reluctant one. His blue turban was his trademark. An Oxford-trained economist, he was widely credited as the architect of far-reaching reforms that opened up India's economy, propelled years of unprecedented growth and lifted billions of Indians out of poverty. His decade as a Prime Minister helped develop regional peace and global partnership, especially with the United States. He leaves behind a void that is incomparable.
उनका जाना एक राष्ट्र के रूप में भी हमारे लिए बहुत बड़ी क्षति है.
We know him as a great prime minister, somebody who pulled 10 million people out of poverty every year, somebody who managed the economy so well that India survived the world financial crisis when other countries were going under. He did all of that, but I remember most of all the human being.
उनकी छाप पूरी दुनिया में पड़ी. उनके इकोनॉमिक लिबरलाइजेशन के लिए, जिससे हिंदुस्तान का इकोनॉमिक नक्शा ही बदल गया.
He changed India and he changed the region and maybe the global balance also. As Prime Minister, he handled that delicate phase as the war ended, and then how you got on to transition to peace and resolving the outstanding issues.
India and the world today is mourning the loss of Dr. Manmohan Singh, India's former Prime Minister. Joining me is Meera Kumar, former Lok Sabha Speaker, also a cabinet colleague of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Ms. Kumar, here on CNN News 18. You were a part of Dr. Manmohan Singh's cabinet. What was your experience like? Any anecdotes that you'd like to share working alongside him, working under his leadership?
Thank you so much for inviting me for this show. First of all, I want to pay my very respectful homage to Dr. Manmohan Singh ji. I have known him for many, many years before he joined the cabinet, before he became the Prime Minister. We were neighbors, and I went to his house very often. He came to my house quite often. And this interaction was to my benefit because the kind of personality he was and the way he was thinking has enriched me, because I thought he was a very rare personality. He was completely free from any kind of prejudice. Most of the people I meet have some kind of prejudice regarding religion or caste or color or language or wealth of the person, even the address of the person. You know, there's so many kind of prejudices, but I found him above all that, and that really has impressed me and also has enriched me. Later, I was a member of the cabinet and I was Minister for Social Justice and Empowerment. And he told me, Meera ji, your ministry, social justice, is the face of our government. It is the identity of our government. It is the soul of our government, social justice. For those who are left behind, who are at the margin, the Dalits, the backwards, the deprived, the people with disability, the senior citizens, the orphan children, and such like. How much can we do for them? What extent of commitment we have for them is the real test, is the litmus test for this government. And I was so impressed by his sensitivity. Very few people have this kind of sensitivity. And you see, when I became the speaker, there is something which I learned from him, which I always tell people. You see, there's been a long-standing tradition in our parliament that for discussing anything important, it's always the Prime Minister who comes to the chamber of the Speaker, and it's not the Speaker who goes to the Prime Minister's office. So one day he rang up and he came to my chamber. We had the discussion, but I was very embarrassed, and I said, he's such a great personality with so much experience, and I should be going to his office. So next time when he wanted to come, I said, no, please don't come. I'm coming to your office. He said, no, you can't come. I said, no, I will come. He said, no, Meera-ji, there's a very healthy tradition that we have in our parliament, and we should preserve it. It should continue. So I learned that whatever has been happening which is good and healthy must be continued. Which is not healthy, harmful, must of course be done away with. So I learned a lot from
And since your association goes back even before your political career began, I want to ask you this. Was he always somebody that spoke very little? Was he always a man of few words? Because I'm asking you this because when you were elected the first woman speaker of the Lok Sabha, he said, this is an iron fist behind a velvet voice. Was he soft? Was he always somebody who was open with the kind of praise or criticism that he had for his colleagues?
It should not be a matter of criticism. If you speak less, it's much better. You work more and you speak less as compared to those who speak a lot and don't work much. So this is a very good quality in him, and he always chose his words which never hurt anybody. I don't think he ever hurt anybody with his words. And he was just dedicated to his work. And as a teacher, he was a great teacher. He was a great teacher. And there are so many economists who have become great economists because he taught them. And he was as an administrator, of course, he has a remarkable career. And then when our economy, when our economy was at the brink and we had almost exhausted our foreign exchange, it was he who came to its rescue. I don't think anyone could have done what he did. And for the economic reforms that we are now seeing the benefit of it. And when there was economic meltdown in the world, you know, how he steered our economy. I mean, there were so many developed nations which had GDP which fell below zero. we were still, we managed because of him.
And you know, the economist in him, the architect of reforms, economic reforms in this country is something that is spoken of, but something that is not spoken of is how he handled foreign policy, the United States specifically in that one nuclear deal situation, and the neighborhood. I ask you this because you've been a diplomat yourself before you were a politician. So what was your impression of him in that aspect?
Yes. I was going to mention, it's not that it should not go unmentioned, but he steered the country clear of all this. It was a great controversy at that time, I remember. But how deft he was in handling the situation. And I think, I knew, as people say that he spoke less, I think that was a quality which really, really counts sometimes in diplomacy. Well, he was not a trained diplomat, but in diplomacy that also is a virtue. Yes. And so far as our neighborhood is concerned, again, situations in the life of the nation. There's so many, there are critical moments, and how it depends on the person who is at the helm of affairs, and that is the Prime Minister. It depends on the Prime Minister to really ensure how the country, nation is not affected or harmed by it, and it progresses. He brought about so many historic bills that were enacted, right to education, because he was an educationist, right to education, right to information, you see, to say that yes, we remove the curtain. It is a very, very bold step. And Manrega, I think, is a grand thing. What has happened for the, till now in our economy, the percolation theory was applied. That at the top you develop, and then the benefit of that would percolate to the bottom and to the poor. But he said no, we will directly approach the poor and benefit them. So all these were great historic steps that he took.
And much like his blue turban, taking bold reforms was also his trademark, many would say. Some people called him the compulsive reformer as well. But I want to ask you this, in his last press conference in 2014, he said, I believe that history is going to be kinder to me than my contemporaries or the contemporary media. Do you think that rings true today?
Well, history doesn't have to be kind to him. History is compelled. History is just compelled to praise him for what he has done. It's not a question of being kind. You are kind when a person has not done anything and then you praise. Then when a person has done things, you're just fair to the person.
Economic reforms is something that Dr. Manmohan Singh was credited with. What we see India's economy in shape today, he laid the foundation of that new India.
Yes, he did. That is acknowledged all over the world. Even his opponents in India acknowledge that he laid the foundation for economic reform and liberalization.
So many people tagged him the accidental Prime Minister. How would you respond to that? Somebody who was very close to him also called him that. One of his advisors, in fact.
Who said that?
Sanjay Baru had called him the accidental Prime Minister. There was a book on him about it as well.
I have read the book. I don't agree that he was an accidental Prime Minister. He was deliberately chosen by Mrs. Sonia Gandhi in order to be Prime Minister in a situation where Mr. Narasimha Rao could not be again Prime Minister and Mrs. Gandhi was reluctant to be Prime Minister. He was not a stopgap Prime Minister. He was not a Prime Minister filling in for the real Prime Minister. He was named Prime Minister after deliberation by Mrs. Gandhi. And he proved to be a very successful Prime Minister in terms of what he achieved. How do you call it? Accident. An accident is, for example, the President of the US dies and the Vice President constitutionally get elected as President. That is accident. This is not an accident at all. I disagree with Mr. Baru when he described Dr. Manmohan Singh as an accidental Prime Minister.
Mr. Chidambaram, in his last press conference, Dr. Manmohan Singh had said that history will be kinder to me than the contemporary media or my contemporaries in politics. Do you think history is kinder to him today?
Well, today is the day after his passing away. So everybody is kind. But the fangs may be exposed after a few days. even today on social media, there are some disgraceful comments of a man who dies at 92 after a lifetime of service as a civil servant, economist, and finally Prime Minister. But there are many, many expressions of condolences where people have paid a genuine tribute to Dr. Manmohan Singh after fully understanding the impact of Dr. Manmohan Singh on the current situation. Few people leave such a lasting impact on the politics or the economics of the country. What Dr. Manmohan Singh has done to India's economy is to change it beyond recognition. For example, you try to talk to children born after 1991. They cannot imagine that we lived without color television or mobile telephone or laptops or iPads or such technological marvels. They are amazed, astounded if I tell them that we had only one telephone provider, and if you want to make a long distance call, you have to quote unquote book a call and wait for hours. If you wanted to fly, you had only one airline. That is something incomprehensible to the generation born after 1991. Therefore, the impact that Dr. Manmohan Singh's reforms, both as Finance Minister and as Prime Minister, will have an impact, has had an impact for the last 23 years and will have an impact for another 25 years.
So one last thing I want to ask you before I let you go. You've worked alongside Dr. Manmohan Singh in his cabinet under his leadership. Any fond memories that you would like to share today, that the side of Manmohan Singh that perhaps the world or India didn't see?
There are many reminiscences, but this is not an appropriate time to narrate personal reminiscences. That requires a separate chapter or a separate article, because half statements or random statements can be misunderstood and misinterpreted. For example, I have reminiscences about his situation when the Indo-US nuclear deal was almost scuttled. I have reminiscences of other situations, both happy and sad, but that will be told at an appropriate time.